grow up?
In Tecumseh.
In Tecumseh?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I
also,
went to school with some of your family, but it was in Shawnee.
yeah, with both areas, and then also in Arizona on the Navajo reservation. So.
And well, you're going to be telling us about how long you've been painting and all of that. I know you've been in the calendar for a number of years.
Yes. So.
Well, we're just real happy to have you here.
Well, I'm happy for everybody invited me and everybody show up.
Okay.
I know it was to see me and not for the food, so I'm good. I'm good.
Well, I will turn it over to beautiful Bruno and Veitenheimer.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank everybody for showing up. It's obviously a subject we all share, right? So I'm pleased to see everybody. And thank Leslie for providing this space that she's worked very hard for over the last couple of months. So tonight I was going to talk about the art and what it means. So when we say hello to somebody, like in Navajo, it's Yatahe. In Potawatomi, it's Pojan Nikon. And those words have a lot of meaning to them. And not just in the one or two words you hear. So there was meaning in every word that we said. And in the same way, the art represents meaning that extends beyond just what you look at. So Crazy Horse, in one of his last prophecies, the last part of it, he said, "I salute the light within your eyes where the whole universe dwells. For when you are at that center within you, and I am that place within me, we shall be as one." And literally, Pojan Nikon, Yatahe, the Cherokee words, I can't remember anymore, all of those words mean exactly that. So you say something like hello, but it has this kind of meaning behind it. So that meaning comes from a vision of what you're trying to express. So one of the things about Native American language is that when you first start talking to elders, they're very quiet after you say something. And part of that is that they're trying to see what you were saying. They were trying to hear like what was behind those words. And so it's the same thing with art. Every artist has a vision, and that vision comes across, and what you see is the representation of what they saw. So they didn't see that this way. They didn't see that here. They saw that in their mind. And so some of the paintings are expressing this vision that doesn't occur in reality. It occurs in some sort of, we call it etheric space. I did a talk about this on one of the TV channels called Gaia.com. And it's a reality that is not material. And so when you see paintings, when you see sculpture, when you see jewelry, you're seeing a material representation. And so some of that comes through the art that we produce. We're taking that inner vision, just like the vision that Crazy Horse had. That whole last prophecy is much longer than the words that I just said. And so vision becomes something that becomes critical to how we move forward in life. And so Leslie had a vision to have a gallery. I had a vision to paint a painting. And so did all the other artists here. So that vision comes across as through a medium. We call that communication. So even if I say the words, it's like you supply the meaning behind it. And so in the same way, when you view art, you're providing meaning to that. You're pulling that meaning out of the etheric or the spiritual or the spirit world. And sometimes that you can come up with the same words, the same language, the same information they were coming up with to be able to express it as a painting or as an object of art. So we call that communication. So everything you see started out with just what was at hand. We used stone, we used rocks, we used plants, we used anything that was available to us. And of course, over the years, that has progressed. And now we use metals and all kinds of things that we never had before. And that's just the progression that occurs as we move forward in expressing our vision of what we see in our mind. So that's the communication you see. When you see these pieces of art, you're contacting that vision that existed behind it. And some people express it better than others. Some people have more appeal for this or for that artist or this artist. But know that every one of them had a vision in their mind and used their hands and the materials at hand to create whatever they came up with. Okay? The last part of it is what I call landscape. I think it's interesting that like in the phones today we have portrait mode and landscape. And a portrait, if you look at the portraits that are around here, those are landscapes. And they reflect the life that a person lived. And so when we look at our elders, we see all the lines and all the experiences that they had in life. And when we see the young ones, we see the smoothness. No experience has created any kind of lasting effect on them. And yet, when we look at those paintings, we can create a lasting effect in our mind that we have been moved or we have been influenced by what we see. So to me, there's only one thing, and that's a landscape. It can be a landscape of a face, which is a portrait, or it can be a landscape of other things that we see. And some things we don't see. So like the art that I've done, one piece right here, you can see through the shaman because it's not just a physical thing that we're trying to communicate. Just like in the words of Yatahe or Pojan Nikon, there's more meaning there. And it requires you to open up to try to understand that or to what we call hear it or to see that meaning that exists there. And when you do that, you form that connection that allows an artist to want to create and allows you to touch something that is non-physical, to touch a vision, just like what Crazy Horse had. So visions are something that we embrace. It's something that the leaders, like in the painting here, Crazy Horse, Rain in the Face, Gall, all of them had visions for their people. And they expressed it in different ways. Some of that has come down to us and most of it has been lost. So what we see now is a lot of artists trying to recreate that history, that memory and that information that we hope would be passed on to other people. And that was the message that Crazy Horse gave, that all our information, all our vision would eventually be passed on. And we do that through art. So that's my talk. Now, is there any questions? Right? I'll be happy to take questions about any of this.
I have a question.
Yes.
Now, did you paint these over here? Which are the ones you painted?
Right. I have some scattered on the back wall there, and I have these, right?
Okay, what I was wondering is like over here, sometimes what I looked at first was the eyes.
Right.
Expressing eyes. Is it that difficult to paint
Human beings are very interesting. If you paint a human figure, or you paint an eye, or you paint a horse, those are the three things. Oh, hands, that's another one. It's one of the areas where every person that looks at that painting or drawing knows exactly what it's supposed to look like. So if a hand is not drawn properly or an eye is not drawn properly, we immediately notice it, okay? Because we're so attuned to looking at people's faces, right? So when you look at eyes, yes, it is hard. When I painted Custer here, the last thing I painted was the eyes. And I would paint a little bit and then step away and come back because the eyes convey so much meaning. It's why we want to look at people, not just on a phone. So yes, the eyes are very important because if they're not done right, everybody notices. Same thing with the hands. Same thing on a horse. If the anatomy's not right, people notice. Now, we can go to the abstract where you try to change it in a way that's not exactly what we call photorealism or realism or depicting. It's something that you've kind of exaggerated or something. So in that case, you can get away with exaggeration. Pletka did this, was an artist. He would make the hands like 3 times as big as they should be. Okay. You don't see any pictures of Bigfoot was a native chief, but you don't see 3 times the size of his feet in a painting. So sometimes we take one attribute of somebody and that's what we use to relate to or to emphasize. Yeah. All right.
Some people here have not read what that says there behind you.
Do what, sir?
Some people behind here haven't read what's behind you on that painting.
Oh, yeah.
Would you read that aloud?
Those are the chiefs that were present at Little Bighorn. Okay. And so Two Moons and Gall are not well-known names, but they were important chiefs of the Lakota and some of the other tribes that were there. And then, of course, Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull and Rain in the Face are the ones that now people kind of tend to remember. But the reason I did this is because we had our heroes too. People don't realize that we had lots of heroes. We had people that had vision for their people, okay? Vision is sadly lacking in our world today, I think, my opinion. So does that answer the, yeah, yes?
Can you tell me about your painting that's over your right shoulder?
I did a series I started several years ago. It's called Shaman Dreams. And the painting on the right here is Mitten Rock in Arizona. I grew up on a Navajo reservation. There wasn't a town there. We lived 80 miles north of Flagstaff, and my uncle and dad and people were building when they started Glen Canyon Dam. And so we were just left to run wild through the desert. But one of the things is every weekend we went places, and it was all dirt roads, but we'd go to Mitten Rock and Winslow and all the different places. Mitten Rock and Hopi and Navajo is where the spirits came into the world. So when you look at the little black lines up there, you can find humans, praying mantises, you can find birds, there's all kinds of things. And this is that vision aspect of art, is that if you start looking, you can see or find meanings in some of the abstract or even some of the real looks of it. I paint in an impressionist style, meaning I mix up colors and stuff that may not exist. But it's a funny story. There was an art dealer in New York, I think, that saw some Oklahoma paintings, and they had orange sky. And he said, there's no such thing as orange skies, orange sunsets. And then he came to Oklahoma one time and looked up and it's like, that's amazing. That's the most brilliant orange I've ever seen. And yeah, and so it's one of those things that becomes unique to here and our culture, and so. But Mitten Dreams was, Shaman Dreams, that was start of a series. This is another one. This is Shaman Dreams. You can actually see through, right? Because it's a dream state. and of course the eagle and the medicine man. So these are things that I became fascinated with, of course, as a child, is the stories we heard. And of course, if you look at Native American childhood stories and origin stories, they're just loaded with images and information, and none of it is what we call physical, material. It always relates to spirit. It always relates to things that come to us. Okay, so is that it? Yeah. Okay.
Have you, excuse me, have you painted all your life?
I found a Christmas card I did for my mother in 4th grade. It was bad. And, but my mother kept it. So she had an appreciation for my art, no matter how bad it was. I actually started painting in high school in oils. And I actually, 4th grade in drawing. And I had a teacher always talk about Miss Gregory. She brought impressionist paintings, pictures of them, and hung them on the wall, and gave us a box of crayons and some construction paper. And so that's how I started. I call that a traditional training in art. And later, like around 15, I started in oil painting. And then I found out that wasn't quite a manly thing to do at that time. So I switched over to jewelry. I actually started making jewelry. And so I did a lot of silver work. Went to the North Carolina School of the Arts and Jewelry Design. I moved to Santa Fe, did jewelry up there, everything from concho belts to whatever. And Sitting Bull's great-great-granddaughter, one day we were talking, and she said, you should paint. I go, I do paint. She goes, well, are you painting now? And I go, no. And she said, why? And I said, because I don't want to be a starving artist. We all know what happens. So that's another thing, is the people that took time to make these. We don't understand. Sometimes it may take years to make a painting, right? You may have to come back to it several times. And so she goes, well, the message I got is you should paint. And I go, well, great. Okay, so, but we listen when message come to us, when information comes. And so I would take, and every paycheck I would go buy art supplies. Because one of the things I never wanted to do was to be so broke that I couldn't have at hand brushes and canvases and everything I needed. Because once you kind of get inspired, and that can happen in somebody's living room, or it's like, let me spread out and do something here. And so after 2 years, I started painting again. And I had accumulated a van full of canvases and paints and brushes and everything I needed, easels. And so that's when I started back painting. That was in the 80s. And an interesting side note, I moved to San Antonio for a little while, and I met a lady. She was in her 80s, late 80s. And I don't remember the occasion, but she looked at me and she goes, you're an artist. And I go, well, yeah, but how do you know that? Because it was not circumstances. And she goes, well, I have something for you. And I go, okay. She goes, I was an artist too, and I have an easel from art school, Chicago Institute of Arts. And she said, I want to give it to you because I know you'll need it. And so I went to her house, and I have that easel, and that's one I paint off of. And it's a German metal easel, ugly as everything, but it works beautifully. So things happen once we start down a path. Once kind of like a vision of painting comes to you. But actually what you're doing is being creative. And so everybody here that brought food was being creative. They were doing it with food. I do it with art. I do it with other things. And so that's how that came about. Been painting ever since.
When is the painting done?
When's it done? there's the common knowledge in painting is it takes two people to paint, one person to paint and another person knock them in the head when it's done to keep them from sitting there going, right? What I discovered was that if I couldn't find any place else to put paint, so I paint on something and paint on it and paint on it, and I pick up a brush and I cannot find anywhere else to put paint, I lay the brush down, sign the painting, I'm done, right? Occasionally, I think one or two, I've gone back like years later, like I have, Leslie asked me, do you have any other paintings? And I go, well, yeah. Because you put them away or hang them on the walls and then you get to looking and go, oh, I should put maybe just one more spot of paint. So that's how it works, right? They're never finished. It's always, because if you think you have a critical eye when you look at art, the artist is horrible at it, okay? They just pick and pick and pick because they're trying to match up the material world with the vision world, right? And you can't do it, okay? You can get close. I mean, I admire the artists in here because some of them have come very close to whatever their vision was. And being weird, I can tell you that sometimes I can see the vision they had. And so what do we call that? A shared vision, right? So we have that when we get together, when we create things, whether it's food or art or anything else. So.
I had a painting on layaway at a gallery one time, and when I came and paid it off, the artist had come in and had changed something in between the time I purchased it and the time I got to take it home.
That,
Did it make it worse or
yeah.
Well, my memory is so flaky, I couldn't tell you for sure.
That's phenomenal. There's a story of Turner, J.W. Turner, painted in England, and one of the big salons of, they invite all the painters in, and he had a friend that had a painting there, and it's a famous painting. I don't remember, View of the Docks or something. It's all done in grays, and it doesn't have a lot of impact. Turner went out of the salon, went to his home, grabbed a paint and a brush, and came back and walked up to the painting and, right? He painted a red buoy in the water, like, And of course they grabbed him and everybody's raising Cain and everything, and the artist come over that painted the painting and goes, that's great, thank you. So don't let kids in here with crayons, okay, or magic markers, because they're going to look at something and go, I think I can improve on that. So.
Get favorites?
Pardon?
Do you ever get some of your favorites that you paint?
Yes, there's, I love Shaman Dreams, and of course, like all people, I love all of the paintings I paint. And part of that is because the vision I had, I call that the landscape of the etheric, or where visions occur, is when I can see something I've done that matches that. Remember that? Then I like that. I like the fact that I have expressed what I've seen. Okay, so the one back there is called Inlaid Sky, and it's one I did a long time ago, and it has about 30 different colors of turquoise in it, and it took a while. It took a while to paint, so because I would have to let each little area dry in order to maintain all the linear aspects of it. Shaman Dreams I love. There was a Choctaw artist, and I had a studio above Main Site when it first opened, and here in Norman. And my friend came in one day, and I was painting Shaman Dreams, and all I had on there was the black lines. And he's like, what in the world? And I go, just wait, I know what I'm seeing. You see what I mean? And then, of course, how do you express what you see? Well, you pick up paint or colors or form. So yes, I do have favorites, all of them, because I painted them, right? So, but it is that trying to match up what you see in your mind, in the mind's eye, we call it, and then your skill is to be able to express that. And one of the things in the 1600s, 1700s, when we were first developing an art aspect to the everyday things we needed, like our clothes, even a weapon, a spear, anything, to be able to make it your own, to be able to put a signature to it, to be able to create something like the moccasins there with your own beadwork. That became something that, not exactly prideful, but something that you shared. And that's the thing I tell people about all art. It's a form of beauty that you share with yourself when you purchase a painting, or it's a form of beauty you share with others when you show them in your home or in a gallery. And so to be able to express that form of beauty became a mark of character. And so the character of the person was felt through the art they produced, through the objects that they adorn. And that's where we imbue things with spirit. And if you've ever been to a powwow and somebody lays down a feather or a hat or anything on that first row of chairs, all Native Americans know, don't touch that because it may have medicine in it. And so a lot of paintings, a lot of the work I do has what I term medicine in it. It has images and things that are meant to convey information from the spirit world, from the vision world. Okay?
Is that where the motifs of the crosses and the bison horns?
I'm sorry, say again?
The motifs of the cross and the bison horns?
Yes.
Is that what that
Yeah. The bison horns represent spirit beings. Okay? So it was common, like particularly in the Plains tribes, on their shields or on their teepees, on their horses, they would paint spirit beings. And they were invoking the spirit world. And if you read Navajo mythology, it's just loaded with it, and also Hopi. But and those are the ones I'm most familiar with. But to invoke a spirit being going into battle was to have somebody on your side. Okay? So that's what those are about. There's another one over here, and I've got one on the easel I just finished. And I like that idea. This is called a Wall Street Warrior. It's the idea that even in today's world that you would want protection. You would want an angel. You would want a protective being to be on your side while you went into daily battle. And so that's the idea behind those. And then the crosses, that gets into an area where I have an opinion. This one is what I call a fractal. It's the fractal nature, meaning when you break something down, you still have a part of it left over. And so if you look at that painting long enough, Leslie and I were trying to count the crosses in it. And if you start counting and every outline's a cross and you get lost. And so that's we would call a medicine painting because you get lost in it. And so some of the paintings I do, that was the intent. But the crosses is an area that has not necessarily been kind to Native Americans over the last 400 years. I'll put it that way. Okay. I could say a lot more about that, but I won't. All right. So, yes. Just to finish up on that is all of them represent information that had meaning to us that was not necessarily the same meaning to the Catholic Church or to the Penitentes or all the other groups out there. We had that image a long time ago. It's just like the one on the floor here. And we would put it in because it had meaning to us. And what it means to us is the four directions. You know? So like I say, that meaning existed long before the other crosses came into being. And so that's what I was trying to represent with that. Again, trying to give vision to the visions that I have, and to be able to express it, communicate it in the form of canvases and paint. So, yes, sir?
Why the iron crosses in there?
Oh, which one is this?
The Wall Street.
The Wall Street.
Oh, remember what I said about exaggeration? Exaggeration is a form of art. Again, Pletka, and I mean, there's dozens of artists out there, Howe, where some part of it is exaggerated a little bit. Again, that image, those type of crosses were prevalent in the Navajo weavings in the 1800s. So, long before Germany. So. And so that same thing is like as a Wall Street warrior, you see the striped shirt, the suit, but it's again, you're going into battle. And that's something that I talk about, like everybody goes into battle every day. And so you should prepare yourself. You should get yourself all ready and get yourself set. And it doesn't have to be physical battle. It can be a mental battle to deal with your emotions or your experiences or your relationships. All those are forms of battle. And sometimes you can see that in the portraits that are in here and other people have done. So.
And everything now is oil?
I do some gouache on paper. I do some pen and ink ones. Those are more abstracts, and I could fill a wall of the abstracts I've done. It's entertaining that in certain parts of the country abstracts are popular and other parts aren't. Contemporary art or art where we're making fun of something is popular in some areas and some areas not. So again, it's just like where you are and whether or not that's something that you want to do. I mean, there's a little gouache over there on the other side, and it's called White Man's Gift, and it's a mask, and it's got little red dots on it. And of course, the white man's gift was smallpox. Yeah, and so people really don't understand, if you're not native or studied our history, what all has gone on. Right? It's a deep subject, and it's one of the things that, like, when I talk, I try to give some of that history because it's worth looking at. The old adage, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. So that's when you walk around here, you're seeing visions, you're seeing history, you're seeing the future. And that was one of the things that Crazy Horse was talking about in his visions. The rest of his last prophecy was not very light, we'll put it, right? There's some darkness there. And
How long ago did you start using Peter Paul Bruno?
It's not unusual in Native culture to have many names in your lifetime. And so depending on your experiences and visions, especially after a vision quest, you would come back and change your name. And so I used to do a lot of that type of stuff, and one day I came up with as a modern day medicine man, that I would talk about this stuff. And so I wrote some articles for Native American Times and some other articles and interviews that I did under that. And one of the things when I started thinking about painting is Veitenheimer's not a clan name. Right. So all the men in my family are named Peter or Paul, and so my grandfather's Peter Paul Veitenheimer, and there's Peter Paul Veitenheimer the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. So I escaped that, but my middle name is Paul. So then my grandmother is a Bruno, and so we carry lineage through that all the way back to the 1700s or whenever they started, and so. It's not uncommon too to honor your elders or your grandparents, and so I picked my grandfather's first name and my grandmother's last name and put myself in the middle, and so that's how the name came about. So I write under that name and on Native American history and information, and I also paint under that name. So. Anybody else? Great. Let's eat. Yeah. Anyway, thank you all for coming. I hope you love the new gallery. It's brilliant as far as I'm concerned. I love it. I'm amazed at the ability to display all the different artists here, and certainly hope you come back. All right, so thank you, Sally, thank you, Leslie.
Leslie, did you have anything you wanted to talk to us about your gallery, or?
Perhaps the date, tell us the dates of your openings and all that.
So, you're the first group, or the first people to see it. We unveiled, took the paper off the window today. We have our ribbon cutting December 1st at 10:30 in the morning. The grand opening will be that weekend, and then the calendar signing the following weekend. So it's still a work in progress. It's not completely finished, and you'll see things. They just know that we're not there yet. But welcome to the gallery. Look around, let us know if you have any questions.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
for doing it.
Thanks for having me, for hosting.
All right, thank you, everybody. All right.